Welcome to the Cult Film Showdown's controversial Saturday morning cartoons, featuring the masters of marketing that produced these cartoons based on R-rated content. These are Saturday morning or daytime cartoons aimed at children that were based on very much not those things properties. And I'm your host, Jim Cotta, and I am joined by Nick Boxer.
Hey ho, by Crom, I'm glad to be here.
Polishing off his bowl of Frankenberry, Jack Hall.
Speaking of weird, oh man, Frankenberry was okay. Booberry, you turn your stuff blue, and that was not. It had a lot of dye in it, is what I'm saying. It was not. Yeah, Mom didn't keep buying it for me.
Yeah, I'm still like I like the I like that Flintstones breakfast cereal, and then like the bowl of Cocoa Pebbles shows up. I'm like, I should have been more specific.
Yeah.
All right. Well, by Crom, we are talking about the 1992 to 1993 series, 2 seasons, called Conan the Adventurer. And Jack, let's start with a bit of context on this show.
Conan the Adventurer, based on the Conan the Barbarian novels. What are we going to say? It's from Robert E. Howard, that was created in the 1930s. Let's see, they were. This comes out in 1992, so it's 10 years after the Conan the Barbarian film, and 8 years after its sequel, Conan the Destroyer. So in many ways, you say it's probably not really based on the Conan movie so much as it is based more on the books. But even in that context, it is very much defanged as far as its violence and sex. It had 13 episodes in its first season in 1992, and then 53 episodes or 52 additional episodes for a total of 65. It was followed by Conan and the Young Warriors, which lasted 13 episodes and was not very good from what I understand. This one's actually fairly well thought of. But it is, I'll be interested to get your guys' take, because it's not, for me, it didn't work that well. But, certainly, people do praise it for being fairly close to the early novels as far as characterizations and characters and characterization is concerned. Like I say, for me, just the problem that Conan without sex and violence just isn't Conan.
You know what? I would tend to agree, but I do have a huge caveat here. I think what we watched is a terrible pilot to an actual good show. Because after the pilot, I kind of fell asleep with it on and then woke up and started watching it again. And I have to say, like, the 5 episodes I watched once I woke up, I was really into. Yet the pilot is just terrible without any of the supporting characters in it. I might as well just go right up into the recap here. This pilot basically gives you a bridge version of Conan's origins. Conan in this incarnation, we start in Cimmeria. He's a young boy. He gets a magic sword, departing from the source material. And then a snake bad guy shows up, turns his family to stone, and Conan is off on a quest. And he gets a really annoying sidekick in the form of Phoenix, a baby phoenix to accompany him on his ventures, who lives in a magic shield, and he's off to get the bad guy. And that's really all that happens in this pilot episode. But as I said, by the third episode, it gets actually kind of engaging. In fact, even adapting famous Conan stories like the Elephant Tower by the third episode. I was actually surprised how much I liked this, despite how neutered it actually was.
That probably will be the complaint consistently from us and for most people, I think, is how neutered it is. For me, like I say, this first episode felt like you took Conan and He-Man out, because I could not feel like, oh, I could just watch He-Man and get something similar. And that this, like it didn't feel very, I don't know, fresh or to me. And I don't know, maybe that does change in the further episodes in.
I think they just had so much to stick into that first episode that the actual flavor of the show can't be told.
Yeah, and you have that challenge of, like, your pilot episode also has to sell it to a network. So that baby phoenix, more than anything else, looks like something that the network wanted, whether like they gave it to them from the start or the network's like, hey, can you have a cutesy sidekick that we can make toys of, like He-Man has, like She-Ra has.
What was it with cartoons of that era, before and after, that insisted on having the annoying voiced sidekick character? Even as a kid, on all the popular shows, I hated this character. I've never met anyone who really loved that squeaky voice character that's in every show.
I know
And
part
let's
of
say it's everywhere. It was a must-have in all these series. And yeah, you're right. I don't know anybody who ever liked him.
Lou Scheimer provided the voice on the ones done at Filmation, and he just liked the voice. I kind of get that, but no matter who was producing a show, you have a character with the exact same voice that just wants me to kill somebody.
I think that I don't know why they were all that, because they were all that high pitched, cutesy. I mean, functionally, they're there so the main character has someone to talk to. That they can get into their own hijinks and their own trouble. So they're not, co-leads. They're not useful in a fight in any way, but they're there so that you don't need a narrator, so that Conan doesn't have to constantly explain things to his horse, which he does a bit of it. He does a bit of anyway. He does up to the point where he gets the sidekick. In fact,
that was a bit in the pilot I did enjoy. The naming of the horse was hilarious. That Conan keeps pitching names to his horse, and then the horse bucks him off every time he gets it wrong.
So he finally gets a name that satisfies the horse. I'm glad real animals
and
aren't.
On thunder was probably not the best idea.
No, but I'm glad real animals don't have that same thing. I'm glad, like, I named my cat and it's like it scratched me a couple times to let him know that wasn't a good one yet. Like, that would have sucked.
Yeah, I was pretty committed to the names before we even got them, so so glad that worked out.
My cat doesn't know her name anyway. She just knows food and shedding, really. Those are the two things she knows.
This episode was written by the amazingly talented Christy Marx, who wrote episodes of all of your favorite 80s cartoons, and most famously the creator of Gem and the Holograms. So it was neat seeing.
She was the story editor on all episodes of the series.
Oh,
all
nice.
65.
I would love to see a crossover. Conan meets Gem in the Rockers.
Those lizard folks teaming up with was it the Misfits? Was that the other band?
Misfits was the other band.
Nice.
Yeah.
The real
the
Misfits should have,
snake people thing was the awesome workaround because Conan could fight the snake people without like incurring some sort of violence according to 80s TV rules.
Yep.
And this movie was this show was probably later than the 80s, but it seems to operate on 80s rules.
It is in that window of like post network, pre internet.
Yeah.
And before you start getting the crazy amount of cable channels that were animation specific, because around the end of basically around the end of the 90s, you start getting the dedicated channels, and the Saturday morning starts clearing out. Like you start having much fewer shows, like because Fox owned that space and did some really cool work. So it is kind of on this cusp of one or the other. The animation is rougher than I expected from when this came along.
Yeah, I found it less distracting that, unlike Rambo, Conan actually puts on a shirt in the later episodes when it gets cold. I was really surprised by that.
It does feel like more of a world. Like even though the characters are a bit marshmallowy in their design, it does feel like an inhabited world when they show the village and the plain, like the kind of plains and the city. Like it feels like they inhabit somewhere, which isn't always the case. Often it looks like you just end up with flat backgrounds, and it is interesting. Like it's funny that the intro of the episode explains the entire episode, and then you actually watch it. Like it is the summary of the first episode that they could use on every other one. And they introduce this device that his family has been turned into stone. He has to go get them. So you've got this very quick and simple, why is he on this adventure element to it.
And they actually, because I watched more, I know they actually return to the parents several times, which I found refreshing. Because so often with these things, a motivation like that is mentioned in the first episode, then is never really truly returned to at all.
You see that every once in a while, and the showrunner writes another episode, and they're like, "Man, I really got to focus on this search for a cure for my family." And I'm like, I just assumed that you weren't going to do that anymore because you haven't been for like 10 episodes.
I like the Conan the Barbarian film origin of Conan, where he's like walking, with the, what do you call it? I don't know, that he's like going around in a circle and for like 20 years or something, or 10 years. And that's why he got so muscular. He was like a slave, and I like that so much, and that was not in this, and it left me so disappointed. I liked it so much it actually managed to kind of color the rest of the episode, and I'm going, oh come on, that was so cool. The picture of him going around in a circle pushing the what do you call it? I don't know. It's just like a thing that goes around and around.
I think John Milius and Oliver Stone would have had to get royalties if they included that.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I was waiting for the same scene, to be honest, and then I had to rewind a bit because I lost the thread as I went down the rabbit hole of. But if he got strong by turning that thing nonstop, he would also need a diet that supported that. So like a lot of protein, a lot of carbs, clearly water. Like otherwise he would just get slower and slower. He wouldn't become giant muscle.
Sorry, are you gearing up to throw to our sponsor?
That's right. Have you tried Big Wheel in the Desert? It's the new workout plan from Billy Blanks.
Billy Blank's protein shake.
Big Wheel in the Desert exercise machine. I mean, I bet you we could market that.
I must find out what those things are actually called. I mean, it's like used to grind grain, I think, is what like ultimately that the energy expenditure is supposed to do. But
anyways, we're in a fantasy world. In a fantasy world,
we've wandered.
cars,
Yeah,
you don't need
we're off
water.
the track. Yeah, we're into the weeds, as they say. So it does set things up without. I am curious to try another couple of episodes, as Nick said, that get a better feel of where they're going, as opposed to this really is a sales package to establish what the feel of the show is going to look like, and the look and the basic premise. Like in the first episode, he's just starting to assemble his what will be 4 samurai as opposed to 7. Cost cutting, and then go off on adventures. There's a bit from the episode of the bad guy, the lizard guy, is trying to release Seth, yeah.
Set is the group. Our bad guy had a name that I was unfamiliar with.
Well, like the big demon thing that's trapped in another dimension. And he's like, well, you just have to find this meteor metal, and then you have to build 7 pyramids, and you got to put a Ouroboros at the top of each one of them. And I'm like, how do you know this plan? Like, this seems like an incredibly specific way to release you. I mean, did the I mean, the guys, all those wizards that trapped you, like, did they just like this? Sounds more like a puzzle than it does a lock. Was this in case they needed to get you back? Like, it also doesn't seem like something that you could build as the series went on. Like he gets victorious, so he builds one of the 7 pyramids. Is that like the way the show is going to be structured? Got to defeat him before all 7. Much like a 1990s video game.
Boss battles.
I do, Nick, you hit on something that is such a key point of 80s and 90s cartoons, to have non-human people that are non-human beings that you can kill. We talked about that in RoboCop, that having lots of robots that, even though they seem self-aware, are still okay with destroying them. G.I. Joe introduced the bat robots for the same reason, so you could just shoot something that is not a person. And this does a great job because he doesn't have to stab them. He just has to like touch them with the sword long enough, and they go poof.
Oh, later on in the series, there gets more magical weapons because all of Conan's companions, and there are a lot in this show, get their own object. And wow, the ways these things reveal snake people is amazing.
It is funny.
I do have to ask, if you mentioned the other cast members. I do have to ask about the toy line, because Hasbro did produce a limited toy line for this. Did you look into it at all there, Nick?
Not one single iota did I look it up. I'm wishing I did, though, now.
Well, you'll have time while me and James fill airtime. Look it up right now. the Conan, even Conan, like I talk about the sex and violence being missing because it's just part of the world. It's just I mean, the whole point of Conan is he's a savage. I mean, there is the comic book Conan the Savage. He's a savage. I mean, even in the Conan the Destroyer movie, which was PG rated compared to R rated, I'm not sure if when it came out in 1984, that would have been about the time the PG-13 rating was created. So I'm not sure. It probably it predates it by a little bit, is my guess. Because I think it was 84 or 85 that was created for Gremlins and Temple of Doom. But so even Conan the Destroyer being PG from the R-rated Conan Barbarian, because it was so popular with children. Even that movie to me is neutered and hurts, and it just hurts the property. It's just, without the savagery, he's just another He-Man knockoff, like I said earlier to me. Well, how about the neutered section for you? How did you feel about it there, James?
I've not read any of the novels. I do not
ever.
No, and I'm not positive that I've seen Conan the Destroyer. I think I remember enough of it that I start watching it and I'm like, oh, I have seen this. And then other times I'm like, or am I thinking of Red Sonja? Yeah, Red Sonja, where he basically plays Conan but isn't. Yeah, it is strange having the tone of this sword and sorcery. It really harmed the feeling of stakes in the story. Even though his family's been turned into stone, it's still like no one's dead. Like you're not like you're going on an adventure, like, to thaw out your family rather than like, any kind of moral need or revenge or any kind of motivation. And there's no emotional motivation. It's very pragmatic. Like he wouldn't go on this adventure if there was any other way to unfreeze his family. Like you gotta defeat this guy, or you can go to the top of the mountain and get this flower. And he's like, flower it is.
That's a good point. I don't know what else to say to that. That's a really good point.
All right, Nick, tell us about what kind of toys were tying into this, because I imagine this, because it feels so much like He-Man. I expect that there was some He-Man-ish things happened.
Well, after literally eon of research, I've come back with the information that yes, there was a toy line made by Hasbro. The characters had 5.5 5 points of articulation and action features featuring slashing motion. And there were several Conan figures. That end. Not a great looking line.
It isn't looking at some photos of this line. There's one guy that looks like a leftover from Sectars. The weird Visionaries armor.
Had a Skull Warrior in there.
One of the things that gets me is I'm looking at the toy line too, and one of the things that gets me is there's the Conan horse, and that's it for vehicles, and there's no action sets. There's no castles or villages or anything like that. That's common.
I kind of like that there was no Phoenix character that seemed to be included with any of the figures.
He is tucked away in one of
I just didn't see him then. Darn.
Yeah, he's in the shirtless Conan package. The little Phoenix is there.
God damn it, can't get away from that guy.
And there was a second horse. There's a bad guy horse. So Conan's has a silver armor, and the bad guy strangely is a purple horse with gold armor, which, I mean, toys aside, I mean, that really clashes. It's a bad look.
That means you're an LA Laker fan.
I think the Las Vegas hockey team uses that coloring too. It's a style choice, is what they made there. And then there's it looks like about a dozen figures or that kind of ballpark. Like maybe 8 or 10ish. And
was it Hasbro that Hasbro made G.I. Joe? Did not make, right?
they did.
It was Mattel, I think, who did He-Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, He-Man
Okay.
was an attempt by, because Mattel's big thing was Barbie, of course, and then they needed something that would target the male audience. But yeah, at 92, I mean, G.I. Joe was waning as a popular toy. They of course had Transformers as well, which was still kind of, Transformers was fairly new at this point. They are cheap looking figures for where Hasbro was at, though.
This may have been a budget line as opposed to Transformers. The limited articulation and the obvious cheapness of the characters this is like a birthday gift type line rather than a Christmas big present line. So
like a Kmart, Walmart kind of level brand, as opposed to something to, because at that point toys were starting to really ramp up in price. You got those more elaborate toys and all the new brands that were coming out, around that time ish, like Visionaries and all these other ones that Sectors, they were very expensive compared to where the price point had been. What'd you have, Jack?
Sorry, no, I just my point didn't seem relevant anymore.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
No, these are cheap toys. You think they would have gone more into it. It's funny, on the Wikipedia page for the Conan the Adventurer cartoon, it says it is among the most popular fantasy cartoons, up there with Dungeons and Dragons and He-Man ever produced, and I wonder about that. I think that may be pushing things a little bit. If so, certainly I think they would have pushed a little harder in the toy line.
I feel like that's something that you tell people.
It does say citation needed right beside that.
Fair enough. Citation needed. I was reading Wikipedia yesterday because it was a performer who had been in a real cult, super cult classic, and the Wikipedia does not mention this like very important part of their career. Like that seems like a you decided this rather than a Wikipedia decided this. I guess you could. I guess like how do you debate it? I guess like it's when you say it, when you use a phrase like one of the, I'm like, well, one of like 50 or one of like 5. You're like, we kind of open there.
I mean, I can't think of a ton of other fantasy-based cartoons. Dungeons and Dragons, He-Man. Can't think of a whole bunch of others. So maybe it's number 3, because it's the third of third, so it's way up there with those other ones.
Well, and a lot of the fantasy stuff was doing the merge of fantasy and another subgenre. Like Visionaries is high tech with medieval armor. There was a lot, like we've already seen some of that in other shows that we've been looking at.
Anything else to say about this show?
No, overall I enjoyed it, and I am curious to see a couple more episodes and see how it starts to play as they get their feet under them.
As you say, they have a very talented creator or showrunner, so I mean that there is reason to think positively there. Christy Marx.
Indeed. All right. Well, that was Conan the Adventurer. We watched this on tubetv.com. Tubi on your app device of choice. And
again, it's also on YouTube, as everything seems to be cartoon-wise.
If it's on YouTube, like what you got there is your unenforced copyright. So widely available. And the Cult Film Showdown is sponsored by We Talk Podcasts. WeTalkPodcast.com is the home of the Octagon. You can find We Talk Podcasts on Facebook and on Twitter.com. And we are on Instagram and Patreon under the Cult Film Showdown. And next episode, we will be doing the one that inspired this whole thing. And if you look up any list of controversial Saturday morning cartoons, only in competition with Rambo, really, Chuck Norris Karate Commandos from 1986 is the next thing we're taking a look at. And until then, keep adventuring.
Keep adventuring. All right.